The Udaloi is a Tier 7 tech tree Russian destroyer, a relative newcomer to the game and the pinnacle of the alternate Russian destroyer line. Hello, I am Xarkun, and this is World of Warships Legends. Today we'll be taking our first look at the Udaloi, and as usual, we'll take a glance at my commander build, see what mods I chose, and then jump into some gameplay where we'll talk about the stats and how the ship plays. I'll say that unlike some of my colleagues, and I know MetaJerk in particular really seems to like this line, I'm not really that much of a fan, honestly. I believe the Udaloi was nerfed when it made the journey from PC to console, possibly in an attempt to make it more acutely different than the Tashkent, and frankly, I very much prefer the Tashkent. That's not to say this ship is bad, of course. It's merely, in my view, somewhat peculiar. So let's talk about it. And first up, we've got the mod selection, Aiming Systems Mod 1, Steering Gears, Concealment, and Main Battery Reload. The commander build I've settled on is Trubetskoy with Eric Bay and Vincent Mordoff as inspirations. Bay, I think, is fairly high level. I think rank 14 or 15. So theoretically, that should provide a good concealment boost, right? Well, let's get on to the gameplay segment now. We're going to be on Shard's Domination Mode game, and we'll go over the stats of the ship in terms of how I rank them. We'll talk about the good, the mixed, and finally, the bad. So, starting off with the good when it comes to the Udaloi. Unlike on the Tashkent, where you have to choose between either a repair party or a smoke, the Udaloi comes stock with both a repair party and smoke. Plus, it has an engine boost consumable to boot. So the availability of the repair party does help mitigate one of the Udaloi's downsides, which is a relatively low HP pool for a Tier 7 destroyer, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. The Udaloi, speaking of good things, or continuing on with good things, also has an 8-kilometer range on its 15 torpedoes. Yes, that's right. These 15 torpedoes are launched from 3 sets of quintuple torpedo tubes. There are 2 of them on the wings of the ship and 1 of them down the center line. This gives the Udaloi more torps than the Tashkent, of course, and I think more torps than any other destroyer at Tier 7. Although if you want to use all of them, then you do have to turn the ship around because of how the torpedoes are set up. The torpedoes reload in 100 seconds, they have a 15.1k alpha strike, and they travel through the water at 65 knots. So those are pretty good stats. 1.4 km detectability by sea on these torps means they're neither all that stealthy, nor are they all that conspicuous. They're just good, solid torps, and there's a lot of them. So this might make this ship in particular, and the entire alternate destroyer line preceding it, more attractive to those who aren't a fan of the 4.5 km suicide torps on the original Russian destroyer line, at least till you get to the Tashkent, and I think the short torpedo range on those destroyers is one aspect that might dissuade a lot of people from actually grinding to the Tashkent. If you don't like that torpedo setup on those destroyers, then you'll probably find that the torpedo setup on this alternate line is a little bit more comfortable for you. Finishing off with the list of good things on the Udaloi, it has a 610 meter turning circle, which is pretty tight, and actually very tight for a Russian destroyer. I think it's 100 meters better than the Tashkents, or maybe a little bit more than that. So, there is that. Everything else, though, in my opinion, is either kind of a mixed bag or else not so great. So let's talk about the mixed bag. Udaloi's base hit points pool, as you can see, is 18,800, which I think is on the higher side of average, but not as great as something like the Tashkent, Z-23, Akizuki, or, of course, Friesland. Although the 2 repair parties have the potential to restore 2,604 hit points, which means the Udaloi actually has a potential hit points pool of 24,000. But that is, again, only a potential hit points pool, and you need to use both repair parties to even get close to that number. And it's almost certain that you're not going to be able to recoup every single lost hit point. So there is that. And the guns, also a bit of a mixed bag. From what I can tell of the Udaloi on PC, its 6 130mm guns fire fairly rapidly. I think you can get the reload there down to 3 or 4 seconds. But the Udaloi on Legends has a disappointing base reload time of 7.5 seconds, which is pretty much on par with, like, the IJN Torpedo boat destroyers. Now, using Trubetskoy's Observant Range skill, the main battery reload mod, and Mordoff as an inspiration, I've been able to cut the reload time down to a slightly better 6.8 seconds, but it's still not that great. The guns have a 1900 HE Alpha Strike, 8% fire chance, and 2600 AP Alpha Strike. They range out to 11 kilometers, and the turret traverse is pretty snappy at 8.6 seconds, thanks to Twist and Track, although the base time on the turret traverse isn't all that bad either. Still, with gun stats like these, pretty much every dedicated destroyer gunboat and a lot of the hybrid type destroyers are going to have a faster rate of fire than the Udaloi, and the Udaloi just frankly is nowhere near the gunboat that the Tashkent is, which is a little bit disappointing to me. Although, as you can see with the gameplay in the background, the guns aren't useless by any stretch of the imagination. They're pretty good. They just aren't super high DPM. And that 8% fire chance, it's very good on something that reloads faster than 6.8 or 7.5 seconds. But on something that reloads as slowly as the Udaloi, it does strike me as a little bit less than impressive. And speaking of less than impressive, let's talk about the bad parts of this ship. The worst thing about the Udaloi, in my opinion, is its concealment. Even with Trubetskoy's concealment skill, Bay as an inspiration, and the concealment mod all combined together, the sea detectability is 5.9 kilometers, which is pretty terrible compared to almost every other Tier 7 destroyer running the same skills and same commander inspiration, and it means you're probably going to be outspotted a lot of the time by most of the other destroyers you're going to encounter, which obviously gives them the advantage when it comes to a gunfight, and opens you up to potential damage from any of their teammates who might be able to shoot at you thanks to their spotting. Now, I don't mind bad concealment on destroyers, like the Tashkent, for example, but of course, the Tashkent has the gun firepower to make up for that bad concealment, whereas the Udaloi really doesn't. The anti-aircraft defenses also look fairly poor to me, although I have yet to be able to test them out because it seems like Tier 7 is really lacking in the CVs these days. Not that I'm complaining about that, of course. And then finally, finishing up with the bad aspects of this ship, the Udaloi's top speed is only 38 knots, which of course isn't slow, but it also isn't very fast. It does have that engine boost, of course, to mitigate this rather average speed somewhat, but I don't know. The rudder shift is also rather poor, particularly if you use Observant Range to buff the rate of fire, but that is mitigated if you choose steering gears over propulsion, which you might want to do if you want to quickly utilize all of these torpedoes. All in all, though, I'd say the Udaloi is an effective destroyer. It's probably best played as a hybrid. Make use of those 15 torpedoes whenever possible, and then use the guns to fill in the gaps. At least that's kind of how I've been playing it. Even though the guns don't have an impressive rate of fire, and I've complained about that a fair bit, you can see that, they are still effective, and the AP, for what it's worth, seems to be just as good as the other Russian destroyer AP normally is against broadside targets. Nevertheless, I'm not going to lie, the ship really just doesn't do it for me. Maybe it'll grow on me as time goes on, but frankly, I'd rather play the Tashkent over this thing. And also, maybe I'm just a potato, but I've taken this thing out a number of times, and I really haven't been able to get an impressive amount of damage with it. That could be just because I suck or the games aren't going so well or whatever it is. I chose this game, though, because it shows off the torpedo ability and the gun ability of this ship at the same time. Unfortunately, it's not going well for our team. I think I probably did a fairly good job holding them back from the Alpha Cap, and I would have captured it if I had had better support, maybe. And, well, it's neither here nor there. The rest of my team is pretty much dead, so there's going to be no way we're going to claw this one back from the brink of defeat. There's a look at the AP against the broadside of an Iowa. You can see we get 5 penetrations out of the 6 shells we shot, so again, the AP on this, pretty good, just like the rest of the Russian destroyers, but here we are the last ship left alive, and as soon as we get out of the smoke screen, we're going to be obliterated instantly. So that'll be the end of this game, and the first look at the Udaloi. I'd say it's okay. I know some people like it. Some people are probably going to like it more than the original Russian destroyer line, but frankly, I just don't. I'm going to keep playing it, though. Maybe it'll grow on me. A lot of times I don't like ships at first glance, but they do tend to grow on me, so we'll see where this one goes. Let me know what you think in the comments. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.